Okay, sorry for the clicky clicks. Let's come back over here. So now we got the ability. So we got that. We fixed that bug for where the player was. We also identified that inside of our singleton for the hive mind, things are getting a little dicey, a little hairy. So what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to come back in and we're really going to look at the hive mind, what we're doing, and try to see if we can't set a topic for next week as far as what design pattern would be best to help clean that up. And to Groon's point, and maybe also to Turney's point, this should be something that's organic, right? So ideally, whenever you run down the singleton path, whenever you run down some of these design pattern paths, the power of the design pattern should be that what a design pattern got you into this mess, a design pattern should be able to get you out of this mess. So, I did the look, and we're seeing, oops, here we go, that another example of, instead of going into each one of these actions and making sure the player is set, that maybe that should happen someplace else. So we got a little more refactoring to do, and as we jump into the rest of these actions being parsed by the hive mind, we're going to keep looking at the same thing we did before in some of our old design patterns, where we said, hey, are we creating a lot of redundant code? If we're doing the same thing 3 or 4 times, that's a prime candidate to be refactored. And we're probably going to see the same thing inside of our hive mind. Right? So we've got look at, that's not setting the player. We've got look around, that's not setting the player. So all of these are going to be candidates for doing the same thing we did right here. And hopefully, I say hopefully, but I'm pretty sure, wink wink hint hint, we'll be able to find a way to get this guy back to a nice, lean, mean hive mind that isn't concerned with anything that doesn't have to be. Right now, I'm thinking chain of responsibility. So let's take 2 seconds. I just realized I'm kind of leaving you guys hanging there. I don't really want to. I don't want like a to be continued part 2. What's he going to do next? So C# design patterns, the chain of responsibility. Okay. So the definition of the chain of responsibility is to avoid coupling the sender of a request to its receiver by giving more than one object a chance to handle the request. Chain the receiving objects and pass the request along the chain until an object handles it. So this already sounds ideal for what we need. It sounds like we can go ahead and take the different stages of processing a request and break them out, right? So the hive mind can do what it's best at. We could have a kind of gatekeeper up front that decides what the next step in the responsibility chain should be. And we can start to see how we might be able to branch out into different and just isolated channels of responsibility. So if it's a login request, it goes through one channel of responsibility. If it's chain of responsibility. If it's a action request, it goes through a different chain of responsibility. So just to not keep you guys in the dark about what's being planned, the chain of responsibility is going to serve as a pretty excellent way next week to make sense of this. But before we get there, we want to come through here, refactor, really look at what we're asking this hive mind singleton to do, and then take our next step from there. All right. And I am going to start kind of closing down, because that's the hour for the night. Be back here tomorrow at 6:45. I want to thank Turney and Groon for their feedback. Groon is about 2 steps ahead, and so I'm really curious to see what suggestions you might have. There's a few that I could implement, and I might if I read back into the chat. But I'm curious if you come back tomorrow and then also next week, look at the chain of responsibility pattern, if that takes in the same direction that you were thinking. Okay, so save this guy. It does build. I'm going to go ahead and check it in case anybody wants to grab the code, take a peek around, and come up with questions or feedback or suggestions. So commit, and we'll just call this guy Singleton Week 2, Deep Dive, and Review. Make sure we aren't missing anything. Alright, all synced up. Oh, there we go. So, alright, so week 2 is all checked in if you want to go ahead and grab that code. Otherwise, we'll be back here tomorrow night to keep refactoring the singleton pattern and looking at a few other bugs as they pop up, and hopefully setting the stage for next week where we do the chain of responsibility. And before I go, just make sure that I decorated in here and then chain of responsibility. Definitely do chain of responsibility first, because I think it's going to set. I think doing chain of responsibility is going to set the stage very nicely for deciding where and how and what we might want to decorate along that chain of responsibility, right? So the chain of responsibility is a behavioral pattern, and the structural pattern is going to be, well, how do we then structure all of this? The singleton plus the chain of responsibility. What's the best way to keep all that code organized? Alright, that's it for tonight. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and I will see you tomorrow.